our champion. Oh, you are the awesome one. There is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing halal, hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing halal, hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. You are the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. We can. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, you are the awesome one. There is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing halal, hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing halal, hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. You are the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, you are the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, you are the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can. We always win. You're our champion. Oh. We sing hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. Jehovah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can lose, we always win, you're our champion. Oh, Jehovah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can lose, we always win, you're our champion. Oh, come on, praise him, praise him. Open your mouth and praise him. He's worthy of all praise. He's worthy of all esteem. Praise him, praise him, praise him for his mighty acts, his great compassion towards us. Praise him, praise him, praise him. We truly do appreciate the Abba for allowing us to be here once again to celebrate and commemorate a time of rest, a time that we've come together that we may learn from the Abba. We truly do appreciate him for life, health, and strength. We appreciate him for all that he's doing, all that he's done, and all that he's yet going to do in our lives. We want to begin on this Yom with the Baruching of the Torah. I want to say once again, Torah, for tuning in and being with us to celebrate and to commemorate. I pray that your Yom is going great thus far and will continue to go and be even greater before the Yom is over. We want to begin with the Baruch of the Torah. Repeat with me, Baruch Yahuwah.
Baruch Yahuwah.
The Baruch one.
The Baruch one.
Baruch is Yahuwah.
Baruch is Yahuwah.
The Baruch one.
The Baruch
For all eternity.
for all eternity.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah, our supreme one.
Yahuwah our supreme,
King of the universe.
King of the universe,
Who selected us from all the peoples
who selected us from all the people
and gave us his Torah.
and gave us his Torah.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah,
Yahuwah,
giver of the Torah.
giver of the Torah.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah,
Yahuwah,
our supreme one.
our supreme,
King of the universe.
King of the universe,
Who gave us the Torah of truth
who gave us the Torah of truth
and implanted eternal life within us.
and implanted eternal life within us.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah,
Yahuwah,
giver of the Torah.
giver of the Torah.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Now we will have the reading of the Ten Commandments done by Mattathias. And it is so.
And it is so.
Deuteronomy 5:6-22. Aleph. I am Yahuwah, your power which brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim from the bed of slavery. Bet you shall have no other power before me. You shall not make you any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in Shemayim above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in Mayim beneath the earth. You shall not bow down yourself unto them, nor serve them, for I, Yahuwah, your power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the Abbas upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that hate me and keep my commandments. Gimel, you shall not take the name of Yahuwah, your power, and falsify it. For Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that takes his name and empties it. Dalet, guard the Sabbath day to set it apart, as Yahuwah your power has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahuwah your power. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your ass, nor any of your cattle, nor your foreigner that is within your gates, that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you. And remember that you were a servant in the land of Mitzrayim, and that Yahuwah your power brought you out of their mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore, Yahuwah your power commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Hey, esteem your Ab and your Em as Yahuwah your power has commanded you, that your days may be prolonged and that it may go well with you in the land which Yahuwah your power is about to give you. Why? You shall not murder. Saying, neither shall you commit adultery. Ket, neither shall you steal. Tet, neither shall you bear false witness against your neighbor. You, your neighbor's Isha, neither shall you covet your neighbor's bed, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. These words Yahuwah spoke unto all your assembly in the mount out of the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness with a great voice. And he added no more. And he wrote them in 2 tables of stone and delivered them unto me. And it is so.
And it is so. Leviticus chapter 6, verses 1 through 18, and it reads, these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which Yahuwah your power commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you're going to enter and possess it, that you might fear Yahuwah your power to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the yamim of your life, and that your yamim may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Yasharal, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah power of your Abbas has promised you in the land that flows with milk and honey. Shema Yasharal, Yahuwah our supreme one, Yahuwah is Akkad. Hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah our supreme one, Yahuwah is Akkad. And you shall ahab Yahuwah your supreme one with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words which I command you this yom shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your bed, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. To fall to what?
To bind to the mind.
To bind to the mind. And you shall write them upon the posts of your bed and on your gates. And it shall be when Yahuwah your power shall have brought you into the land which he swore unto your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you great cities which you did not build, houses full of all great things which you filled not, and wells dug which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant. When you shall have eaten and be full, then beware lest you forget Yahuwah, which brought you forth out of the land of Mitzrayim. Excuse me, from the bed of slavery. You shall fear Yahuwah your power and serve him, and shall swear by his name. You shall not go after the power of the people which are round about you. For Yahuwah your power is a jealous power among you, lest the anger of Yahuwah your power be kindled against you, and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not tempt Yahuwah your power as you tempted him in Massah. You shall diligently keep the commandments of Yahuwah your power, and his testimonies and his statutes which he has commanded you. And you shall do that which is right in the sight of Yahuwah, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the great land which Yahuwah swore to your fathers. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. Let's have another song, please.
Be magnified, be magnified, be magnified. Come on, be magnified. Come on, be magnified. Be magnified. Be magnified in the heavens. Be magnified in the earth. Be magnified in the temple. Be thou magnified. Be magnified. Be magnified. Be magnified in the heavens. Be magnified in the temple. You are. Be thou magnified. Be magnified. Be magnified. Be magnified in the heavens. Be magnified in the earth. Be magnified in the temple. You are. Be thou magnified. You are. Be thou magnified. Be thou magnified. Be magnified in the heavens. Be magnified in the earth. Be magnified in the temple. You are. Be thou magnified. You are. Be thou magnified. You are. Be thou magnified. Be magnified. Be magnified in the heavens. Be magnified in the earth. Be magnified in the temple. You are. Be thou magnified. 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 You are. Be thou Worthy is our King. Worthy, 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 worthy of our praise, worthy of our esteem. We magnify him, we praise him. Yeah, for all that he's doing, all that he's done, and all that he's yet going to do in the lives of us as people. We appreciate him for all that he's doing. Once again, we are here to commemorate and celebrate our time of rest. Very important for us to understand these things. And it is so. Let us turn our attention to Yahush, the son of Nun, chapter 1. And we're going to read verse 6 and 7, and then we're going to recite verse 8. Verse 6 is very important too. I know this was a command given to Yahush, the son of Nun, but we can apply it to our lives because there are times in our lives that we truly have to remind ourselves what he has called us to do. We have to remind ourselves of our purpose, and we have to ground ourselves in that purpose. Somebody may say, well, you know, I know what I'm supposed to do. Well, then I commend you. Not that we forget, because we never forget. Right. But there are times in our lives that
You can feel at a point in your life where you feel low. You can feel a point in your life where you need that encouragement. You can feel there are times in our lives that we feel, and I'm sure maybe one or two of you, I'm not expecting everybody to identify with this. There are times that you really wonder, am I supposed to be doing this? Is this the call for me? And if that is you, then this is where I'm directing you to Yahushua, the son of Nun, chapter 1, verse 6, 7, and 8. Why? Because there are times that when you can't find anybody else to encourage you, you need to reach down within yourself and encourage yourself with what? Instructions of the Abba. Very important that we do that. And this is where we're going to begin in verse 6 once again, chapter 1 of Yahushua, the son of Nun, beginning with verse 6, and it reads, "Be strong and of great courage, for to this people shall you divide for an inheritance the land, which I swore to their Abbas to give them. Only be you strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the Torah which Moshe my servant commanded you. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go." Very important, because we know in the time we live in that there is so much stuff out there, so much and so many things, and people as well pull on you. And if you're in that position, you need to know, don't to the left, don't turn to the right. Stay steadfast and unmovable, always abounding in the instructions and the work of the Abba. There are many things that are pulling, and there's a lot of information out there that is being promoted as truth, and it tends to put a pull on you. Anybody knows grappling? Anybody knows when something is put out there, and if you're not careful, you get stuck to it, or it gets stuck yourself loose from it, because you're saying, I don't want this mindset, ideology. I don't want. Well, you have to understand the reason these things come about is to change our opinion and change our confession concerning who we are and whose we are. So it's important that we encourage ourselves and strengthen ourselves and be reminded of what it is we're supposed to do. Well, someone would say, but we're not going to give an inheritance to our people. But let me remind you of something. You may not be the one that may be executing that, but you are still an important part in this, because if you are the nation, then your lifestyle is important, that people see that you believe that there is an inheritance that is going to be given to us as the people, or as the chosen people. So it's very important that we not just say it, but live it. And so these are words to encourage us and to remind us to be committed. Verse 8 is the sum of it all. Let us repeat this together as I have tailored it to fit our time of confession. I will not let this scroll of the Torah,
I will not let the scroll of the Torah
depart out of my mouth,
depart out of my mouth,
but I shall meditate therein,
but I shall meditate therein,
Yom and Layla,
Yom and Layla,
that I may observe to do
that I may observe to do
according to all that is written in it.
according to all that is written.
For then I shall make my way prosperous,
And then I shall make my way prosperous.
and then I shall have great. Then I shall act wisely.
Then I shall act wisely.
Look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, you shall act wisely, and you shall act wisely. Look at your other neighbor and tell your other neighbor, you shall act wisely, and you shall act wisely. Now put your hand over your heart and say, Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I am determined to act wisely.
I am determined to act wisely.
Come on, Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I am determined to act wisely.
I am determined to act
Come on,
wisely.
one more time. I am determined
I am determined
to act wisely.
to act wisely.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. I know I changed it up a little bit, but it's important for us to understand, if we're going to be successful and if we're going to act wisely or be successful, it is important that we remember never to allow his instructions to depart out of our mouths. Why? Because you have to understand, whatever comes out of your mouth is going to prepare the path or create the opening that you're going to either walk in or you're from. Sometimes the reason why we either excel or we either digress and are not able to excel or go backwards is because what comes out of our mouths. Do you not know you are the one that determines where you go or whether you stay? Someone would ask, well, what do I mean? Oh, I'm not going to go nowhere. You're right, because you've just created the atmosphere that's not going to let you go anywhere. You have just said, I'm not going anywhere. So everything that is going to, anything and everything that can come into your life to stop you will do so. because you just opened the door for it to happen. So it's important that we watch what we say. Now we'll put in this matter. He said, put a watch over my mouth, Abba Yahuwah. It's important that we watch what we say. And if you're going to fill your mouth with anything, then it's important we fill it with the writings and that we remember. Yes, in order to have great success, you have to be wise. And if we're not wise, we will not be successful. And the root to our success, no matter what, is obedience to his instructions for our lives. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. If we can have the greatest vision in the world, we can have the greatest plan in the world, and people could tell us all day long, boy, you have a great plan. That plan is going to be successful, and you're going to do this, that, and the other. If that plan has not been birthed out of and has not been established in the Torah, the instructions of the Abba, then guess what? It's not going to go anywhere. And when I say Torah, please understand, I am talking about the first covenant and the renewed covenant. I am talking about both covenants in full effect in our lives. Because you cannot really be substantiated, and you cannot really be grounded in this walk unless you understand the merging of the two. The first covenant and the renewed covenant are one covenant. It's important that we understand that. I know people break it off and say the Old Covenant, the New Testament, or the Old Testament. All those things came in with the interpretation. But in order to understand and focus, it is important that we understand that we need the renewed covenant just as well as we need the first covenant. And understanding their connection is what helps us to proceed and helps us to be successful. Never ever let anyone make you believe that we don't need the first covenant, because without the first covenant, you will not be able to interpret and understand the renewed covenant. It's just like having access. You have a test, but you don't have the answer sheet. If you don't have the answer sheet, you don't know if your answers are right or wrong. So it's important that we always remember that the basis of the renewed covenant is birthed out of the first covenant. That's important for us to understand. And it is so. All right, let's have a new song, please. And it is so.
And it is so.
For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, Oh, we sing hello, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hello, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. For who you are, for who you are our great tower. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, for who you are our great tower. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are our great tower. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are our great tower. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. For who you are our great power. We sing the highest praise. For who you are our great power. We sing the highest praise. For who you are our great power. We sing the highest praise. For who you are our great power. We sing the highest praise. For who you are our great power. We sing the highest praise. For who you are our great power. We sing the highest praise. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Worthy is our King. We do appreciate him for all that he's doing, all that he's done, and all that he's yet going to do in our lives. Once again, here to celebrate, commemorate a time of rest. We appreciate the Abba for inviting us into his rest, the rest that he has given unto us as his people. We take delight in this time as we are here. Yahukanan Aleph chapter 5, verses 1 through 15. Um, um, Everyone who believes that Yahushua is the Mashiach has been born of Yahuwah. And everyone who ahabs the one bringing forth also ahabs one having been born of him. By this we know that we ahab the children of Yahuwah, when we ahab Yahuwah and guard his commands. For this is the ahab for Yahuwah, that we guard his commands, and his commands are not difficult. Because everyone having been begotten of Yahuwah overcomes the world, and this is the overcoming that has overcome the world, our belief. Who is the one who overcomes the world but he who believes that Yahushua is the son of Yahuwah? This is the one that came by water and blood, Yahushua Mashiach, not only by water, but by water and blood. And it is the Ruach who bears witness, because the Ruach is the truth, because there are three who bear witness, the Ruach and the water and the blood, and the three are in agreement. If we receive the witness of men, the witness of Yahuwah is greater, because this is the witness of Yahuwah which he has witnessed concerning his son. The one who believes in the Son of Yahuwah has the witness in himself. The one who does not believe Yahuwah has made him a liar, because he has not believed the witness that Yahuwah has given concerning his son. And this is the witness that Yahuwah has given us given us eternal life, and this life is in his son. He who possesses the Son possesses life. He who does not possess the Son of Yahuwah does not possess life. I have written this to you who believe in the name of the Son of Yahuwah, so that you may know that you possess everlasting life, and so that you believe in the name of the Son of Yahuwah. And this is the boldness that we have in him, that if we ask whatever according to his desire, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have the petitions that we have asked of him. And it is so.
And it is so.
Let us have another song. Let everything that has breath praise Yahuwah. 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 Yeah, 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 yeah. There you go. Yeah, 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 yeah.
That has been praised. That has been let everything that has been praised. 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 everything that has breath. Praise God. Let everything that has breath praise God. Let everything that has breath praise God. Let everything that has breath praise God. Yeah, 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 let everything that has breath praise God. 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 Yeah, 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 let everything that has breath praise God. 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 Yeah, 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 Let everything that has breath praise you. 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 Come on, praise him. Everything that has breath, praise him. Come on, praise him, praise him, praise him. Hallelujah. You're worthy, you're worthy, you're worthy. Come on, praise him, praise him, praise him. He's worthy, he's worthy, he's worthy. We can never get enough of praising him. Praise is what we give to him. It is not for us, but it is for him. And I truly do appreciate him. Even our bad days with him are better than what we considered great days when we were walking in error. Because at least when you're walking in this, might have issues, but we do know that we have a savior. We have the truth. And because of this truth, we know by living according to his instructions, and that we've accepted Yahushua our Mashiach as our savior, that we can live and we have expectation to live again in the place that he has designated for us as his people. So we appreciate him for all that he's doing, all that he's done, and all that he's yet going to do in our lives.
Right.
Mishlei 15:8, the sacrifices of the wicked is an abomination, hateful and exceedingly offensive unto you, Abba Yahuwah, but the prayer of the upright, it is your delight. Tehillim 1:1, Baruch is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the unrighteous, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the instructions of the Abba, and he doth meditate upon them, and it is so.
And it is so.
Abram 11:6, but without belief it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to Yahuwah must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. And it is so.
And it is so.
Ayah 33:4, the Ruach of Yahuwah hath made me, and the breath of the Almighty hath given me life. Somebody say he's a life giver.
He's a life giver.
He is a life giver. Micah 3:8, but truly I am full of power by the Ruach of Yahuwah, and of judgment and of might, to declare unto Yaakov his transgression, and to Yasharal his sin. And it is so.
And it is so.
Tehillim 34 and 15. The eyes of Yahuwah are upon the upright, and his ears are open unto our cry. Verse 17, the upright cry, and Yahuwah heareth and delivereth us out of all our troubles. And it is so.
And it is so.
Acts 1 and 8. But we shall receive power after that the Ruach has come upon us, and we shall be witnesses unto him both in Jerusalem and all Judea and in Shabbat and unto the uttermost parts of the earth.
So.
And it is so. We're going to do our affirmation declaration, and then we're going to do our prayer for this portion of our class. Once again, we do appreciate the Abba for all that he's doing, all that he's done, and all that he's yet going to do in the lives of us, his people. Repeat with me. I purpose to develop my Ruach.
I purpose to develop my Ruach.
I purpose to walk in the light of Torah.
I purpose to walk in the light of Torah.
I am Ibram.
I am Ibram.
I am born again.
I am born again.
I am Ibram.
I am Ibram.
I have the life and nature
I have the life and nature
of Yahuwah in my Ruach.
of Yahuwah in my Ruach.
That life is the Torah
That life is the Torah
of Yasharal.
of Yahshua.
I purpose to walk in
I purpose to walk in
the Torah of life.
the Torah of life.
Yahuwah's Torah,
Yahuwah's Torah
Yahush,
Yahush
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's knowledge
Yahuwah's knowledge
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's Ahab
Yahuwah's Ahab
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's power
Yahuwah's power
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's wisdom
Yahuwah's wisdom
is in me.
is in me.
He is teaching me.
He is teaching me.
He is leading me.
He is leading me.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
The Ruach
The Ruach
HaKodesh
HaKodesh
of Yahuwah in me
of Yahuwah in me
is leading me.
is leading me.
I'll follow her leading.
I'll follow her leading.
I'll walk in the Torah.
I'll walk in the Torah.
Yahush,
Yahush,
our Mashiach.
our Mashiach.
And it is so.
And it is so.
As we stand to do this one and our prayer, we're going to repeat this one, the declaration of our healing and our shalom in the name of the Yahush through the Abba. Let us repeat this. Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
in the name of Yahush,
in the name of Yahush,
our Mashiach.
our Mashiach.
We subdue ignorance
We subdue ignorance
with Torah knowledge.
with Torah knowledge.
And through this knowledge
And through this knowledge
of Torah truth,
of Torah truth,
we claim healing,
we claim healing,
shalom,
shalom,
deliverance,
deliverance,
and salvation.
and salvation.
We decree,
We decree
Torah truth,
Torah truth
in the lives,
in the lives
of your people,
of your people,
our people,
our people,
Yasharal.
Yahshua.
We unite,
We unite
not to fight,
not to fight,
not to fight,
not to fight
each other,
each other,
each other,
each other,
but the enemy,
but the enemy
of our belief.
of our belief.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Now let us bow before the King. And let us repeat this in unison. May the utterance
May the utterance
of my mouth
of my mouth
and the deliberation
and the deliberation
of my heart
of my heart
be desirable
be desirable
before you,
before you,
O Yahuwah,
O Yahuwah,
my rock
my rock
and my redeemer.
and my redeemer.
May the utterance of my mouth
May the utterance of my mouth
and the deliberation
and the deliberation
of my heart
of my heart
be desirable
be desirable
before you,
before you,
O Yahuwah,
O Yahuwah,
O
O
Yahuwah,
Yahuwah,
my rock
my rock
and my redeemer.
and my redeemer.
And it is so.
And it is so.
We have just recited Tehillim 19 and 14, and it is so.
And it is so.
You may be seated in His presence. We appreciate the Abba for all that He's doing, all that He's done, and all that He's yet going to do in the lives of us, His people. Once again, it's a time of commemoration, celebration, a time to celebrate and a time to commemorate, a time of rest. I am just excited about what He's going to say to us on this young. I know we're getting started a little later than normal, but we do appreciate Him once again for the opportunity to be in your presence. We want to say Torah for allowing us to be in your homes, wherever you may be able to come together and to study these things as a mishpachah, important. Once again, I appreciate the Abba, as I was saying earlier, when we were going over Yahush, the son of Nun, chapter 1, verses 6, 7, and 8. Very important that we remain encouraged in this walk, because I know at times this walk can become challenging. I will never say it's hard, but I will agree that it can become challenging at times.
Right.
Not because, it's difficult to keep the commands and to adhere to the instructions of the Abba, but at times with connecting with one another and building relationships that will last through storms and disagreements, and maybe through a difference of understanding the writings. It can become difficult at times. And so with that being said, we want to remain committed and remember what we're called to do. As we were going over some songs for our choir, I ran across an old song that we used to listen to by Fred Hammond, and it's called A Minister's Affirmation. And many of you may have heard it and many of you may not have heard it, but it's one of my favorites because it reminds us, or reminded me, of my mission. Not that I had forgotten, but there are times that if you're not careful, you won't go in as hard. You'll still go, but not as hard as you used to. You still fight, but not as hard as you used to fight. You'll still be committed, but not like before. Why? Because there are things that can come and challenge our belief. There are things that can come and challenge our stand. And I'm just saying this to encourage you. Our lesson is going to be coming out of, we're going to be looking at Yehukin and Moshe, which is Mark chapter 1 and Jeremiah chapter 16. Because if we're not convinced that we are who we are and what we're supposed to do, it's easy to come in and drop the ball and begin to take up another fight, take up a whole nother mission or vision, because we can sometimes become frustrated and become weary in what it is we're supposed to do. That thing is happening. And so it is important for us to understand what we're supposed to do. And so just to encourage you to remain focused and to remain committed to the cause and to the mission. Our mission is to go get the lost. It is not to debate with others. It is not to fight with others. And I know sometime in the process of going to go get these people, you will find yourself in a altercation at times, but don't be dismayed and don't be discouraged. Just remember what the focus is and what our purpose is, and that is to win them over and not drive them away.
Right.
And as I was in the getting prepared for class on this young, as I said, I was listening to the song A Minister's Affirmation, and as I was sitting there, I began to think about how many times our people are still committed and stuck in Christianity. And some would ask the question, well, why? And then some would say, oh, well, they're just, truly brainwashed. And, and no matter what you say to them, they're not willing to come out of that because they're brainwashed. Right. I can agree and disagree at the same time with that. One of the reasons why I believe that our people are most committed to being in Christianity is because of evidence. Evidence. Somebody say evidence.
Evidence.
Evidence. Whenever there is evidence presented in a trial, whether it is from the defense attorney or whether it is from the attorney that is to represent the person that has been accused of the crime or what have you, the number one thing that they look at in order to make a decision on whether that person is innocent or guilty is the evidence. And when there is evidence to back up a case, then it is really hard to convince people otherwise when you are trying to pull them into something different or trying to make them see otherwise. As I was in there preparing, I believe with all my heart that the Abba began to speak to my heart. When we began to look at evidence, once again, our people are evidence driven. They have to have evidence to prove a theory, a point, a method. If there is really no evidence, then many of them, whether consciously or subconsciously, are going to ignore what is presented. Many need tangible evidence. Many need my lips need literature evidence, historical evidence. No matter what, there is still a level of evidence that is needed to be presented in order for them to believe. And as I began to meditate and think about that, I began to think about how many times we've heard people, and I've heard people, constantly go in Christianity and say, I was healed of this, I was healed of that. And then you say, but how do you know? Because the evidence that when I went back to the doctor said, I no longer had this disease, or I no longer have this problem. Help me. Well, the issue comes in once again is evidence. And someone would say, but you can't refute or you can't dispute evidence. Yes, you can. And the reason why we can, and all of this is lining up to what we're going to be talking about, fishers of men. Evidence. Someone would say, well, what do you mean by evidence? Well, you have to understand, when they get that report back and there is nothing there, they're going to believe the evidence presented to them. Watch this, even if it is falsified. This is why many times when you hear about, and even if you've seen movies with cops that have the guns that they have on their legs, or they have a gun that they take and they put that gun planted evidence, so that it'll be more convincing to the jury if it ever has to go to trial, meaning that there is evidence out there, but it is false evidence, and it's only going to support that in its framework. So in order for us to get to the bottom of a thing, we have to surpass or go past the evidence that is presented and look at that what is called for, to make sure that the evidence that is presented, it is substantial, and that it lines up with what is needed, what it is that we are trying to acquire, or what our goal is. So when Christianity receives this evidence, excuse me, despite of the information that is presented, they still go with the evidence instead of looking at where the evidence has come from. We as a people, we do not just look at evidence, but we look at the source of the evidence. Right. If the source is not lining up in truth, then it's not going to work. Right. You have to understand, the root to poverty and dis-ease is disobedience when it comes to our people. Right. Remember, he told us, I will not put these diseases or sicknesses upon you. In other words, you have to understand, these diseases and sicknesses were already in the land. But he said, I will not put them on you. Why? Because you are a set apart people to me. So it is important that we understand that when we come with these diseases and these sicknesses, it is because the majority of the time, or 100% of the time, it is because of disobedience. Why are we poverty stricken? Because of disobedience. The root to all of these things is disobedience to the instructions and the commands of the Abba. Right. But many would agree with that because of the evidence that they have in their lives right now. And would say, but I can prove different because I have been blessed. Truly, to understand what it means to be blessed. Does blessed mean to be empowered? Does blessed mean to have everything that I want in spite of what I know is right? So it's important that we understand that the Abba has given us instructions and has clearly outlined for us how, what, and how we are to regard, how we are to live, what we are supposed to give ourselves over to, what we are supposed to pay attention to, and what we are to disregard. But because of evidence that substantiates the error, many people will continue to walk in that. Why? Because they are totally convinced that this way is right because of the evidence that is presented. And as I said before, all evidence is not evidence that is presentable. All evidence is not right evidence. All evidence It's not evidence that is correct. Once again, you have those that have planted drugs, guns, other information upon people to substantiate their cause. And that is to make sure that that person or persons are never free, are never able to come into freedom or being able to be liberated because of the evidence that is against them. Now, with that being said, once again, the reason why I'm saying this is because now we need to go and check not just facts, but truth based in the evidence that we have. Now, many say, well, the Abba, he knows my heart. Yes, and Jeremiah also said that he does because it's evil and because it is deceptive. So yes, the Abba knows our heart. But in order for us to truly be assured that we're walking in truth, is let's check not just the evidence, but the witnesses and their credibility to the evidence. Criminals are only going to testify on the behalf of another criminal. So if you're expecting to get a negative response from somebody walking as you are, that's not going to happen. Are y'all following me? Am I making sense?
Yes.
So people, especially cops, whenever they have to go through this, what do? They get their boys to substantiate witnesses. The evidence that was found is legitimate. But then when you go and take a closer look and you have a lawyer that says, hey, I'm going to look at this again, and we're going to pull these witnesses and we're going to grill them and we're going to take them to the 10th degree, and we're going to see that if this evidence is for real and if they were coerced in saying this or themselves were really there, something. But we're going to break this thing to make sure that this evidence is legitimate, so that whatever ruling comes down, it is ruled based upon evidence that has not been tampered with and that is legitimate. Now, once again, somebody would say, but what does that have to do with us? It has a lot if you're not walking in truth, because you're basing your lifestyle and your belief upon evidence that has been tampered with. Somebody said, well, how do you speak against healing? We know people have been healed. No, people have not been healed. That's a lying wonder. Now, I know many times people think, well, you're going way out because you can't tell me that I haven't been healed. You can't tell me that this is not true. It's a lying wonder. Lying wonders are those things that make people believe. People believe lies, like people believe all these years and continue to believe that we're Black people. And we are not a Black people. We may be highly melanated, but there is no way to substantiate that we are a Black people. But if you look at the evidence they present, then it's easy to fall under that. So what am I saying here to y'all? I am saying get the evidence, and not just facts to back it up, but get truth and get witnesses to be able to substantiate why you believe you believe. Just because someone says, I've been healed of this or healed of that, who and what is your source? Some would say, well, God is my source. Which one? Which one? Because Yahuwah is not going to break the order that he has placed for us, for you or for me.
Right.
Evidence has to go through the acid test. It has to go through trying. It has to go through the pulling, the tearing, and if it can tear, be torn up, if it can be, if the acid can go through it, it has to go through an acid test in order for it to truly be legitimate and valid.
Right.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. Why? Because you have to understand, if we don't look at the evidence and to a degree scrutinize it to the point that we say, I don't want just the evidence, I want the sources, and I want to see witnesses. And I want these witnesses' background. I want to know the credibility of these witnesses. I want to know where were they, what did they do, what is their lifestyle. Because until we have that, then you're still basing your evidence on people that are not going to stray or say anything different from that. Because they're believing what you believe. Why? Because they're convinced in what they have is legitimate. So it's important that we understand. Why? Because here we come to this. Yahush makes disciples, fishers of men. Now, someone say, well, what is this? It is important that we ourselves be wholly and totally convinced and convicted of truth. Because it is then that we will be able to go and truly spread the Besora of the Abba through the name of Yahush, through our lifestyle, and even through our witness. Many to Yam will try to destroy the credibility of our belief in what we walk in. Why? Because they believe they have more evidence. But evidence without sources and without a concrete and stable witnesses, it's not credible. That's why they throw out stuff or throw out witnesses, because they say their credibility is iffy. And so we have to look at these things. We have to look at them. Yahush chose men of that he could trust. He didn't wake you and me up because he distrusts us. He woke us up because he believes and knows he can trust us. Because he knows that no matter what situation you may find yourself in, I may find myself in, I'm going to shake myself and I'm going to get up and say, no, I can't, I'm not going back, because I can't get in this place, this low to bar place, to where now I'm not fulfilling the mandate on my life because of feelings. I got to get up and shake myself and move forward to that what he has called me to do. And that is be a witness. As a witness, don't you realize you are a fisherman? Whether you believe it or not, you are fishing. And so it is important that we understand our responsibility and our duty to our consciousness and our being awake to his instructions to our lives. Very important, because if not, we will get caught up and we will become like so many others. It becomes a ritual. It becomes just a habit, and we just do it just for the sake of doing it. Or because we feel like I have to do this, and we do have to do it. But understand what I'm saying. We don't just do it out of a sense of duty. We do it because we are help him. Right. That's what happened to our ancestors and forefathers. They did things out of a sense of duty. And whenever you do something out of a sense of duty, when that duty no longer presents itself as being a mandate or carry that weight, then guess what happens? We will dismiss it and go on to the next thing. But here it is important that we understand who he was going to. Let us look, first of all, let's look. I'm going to go back. Let's look at Matit Yahoo 15 and 24. I'm going to start at verse 21. Let's start at verse 21. And it is so. Read that for me, please.
And Yahush went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Yahuwah, thy son of Dawood. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she cries after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Yahshua. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Power, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. And she said, Truth, power, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Then Yahush answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy belief. Be it unto you even as you will. And her daughter was made whole from the very hour.
From that very hour. All right, let us look at this again. All right, chapter 15, and we're going to look at verse 21. Then Yahush went apart into the coast of Tari, to Soar, and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried to him, saying, Have mercy on me, O master. you son of Dawood? My daughter is grievously troubled with the demon. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and told him, saying, send her away, for she is shouting after us. But he answered and said, I have been sent to the prostituting sheep of the Beth of Yashua. Now, it's important that we understand the conversation that is here and what is taking place. They're on an assignment, and that assignment is to get lost prostituting. I like to say prostituting, not so much lost, but prostituting. Prostituting means what? Means that you are selling yourself to the highest bidder. You go to whatever floats your boat. Prostitutes do what they do because they're trying to make a living. It's not so much about a feeling that they're trying to get out of this or that they're trying to find a hob. It is just about making money to many of them. And so with that being said, it is important that we understand what they were doing as a nation. They were selling themselves. We were in that position to the highest bidder. Whoever came to us with what we thought would appease us and give us the desired evidence that we needed, then that is who or what we went after. And that's what the children of Yashua did and continue to do. But here we see in these events that he tells her, he answers her, and when he answers her, he says, I've been sent to the prostituting sheep of the Beth of Yashua, meaning that he's letting her know you are not a part of that house. Then came she and bowed before him, saying, Rabbi, help me. But he answered and said, it is not right to take the children's lakim and to cast it to dogs, meaning that she was not a covenant person. She was not a covenant. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah. He was showing that the covenant rights are with Yashua first, and that is correct, and then with any other people. Anyone who wants help should enroll in the covenant with a repentant heart followed by obedience. He could not and would not break the order. And so it is important that we understand. Well, somebody would say, but he went out and he did this anyway, and he gave her what she asked of. Why? Because of her belief. Now, once again, it is a exception and not a rule. And this is where we as a people cannot try to reverse the process and make that what is an exception a rule. Right. Because the moment we begin to make exceptions rule is the minute we're going to go outside of that what has already been purposed and put in place for us as his people. Okay. Now, once again, it says in verse 22, and behold, a woman came. And because she cried out to him, how in the world is this? Right. What was going on? What was she around? And now she doesn't want her daughter in this. Now listen what it says. In verse 24, once again, but he answered and said, I have been sent to the prostituting sheep of the Beth of Yashua. Then came she and bowed before him, saying, Rabbi, help me. But he answered and said, it is not right to take the children's lakim and cast it to the dogs. Now, once again, this is showing us order. For so many people that get that order misconstrued and get it and believe that anybody and everybody can come is out of order. Because until we go to the prostituting sheep of Yashua, we can't go to anybody else. Now, if they come to us and they ask for this, then we have every right to give it to them. But watch them. We first still have to go to our people first. This is not being prejudiced. This is not being sensitive. This is just following the order. And this is the way it's supposed to be. And she said, true, Rabbi, yet, listen to what it said. The dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their table. She admitted, I'm not a covenant believer, but I do believe that there is power in you. Now, this is where we have to separate, because the Abba does work a miracle of healing in somebody, does not automatically throw them now into the equation. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Once again, that does not mean that it automatically throws that individual into the equation. But what it does mean is that this individual or these individuals have enough of belief and know enough about our walk to be able to press upon him with their belief to get what they are requiring or what they're asking of. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that, because too many times we try to bring people in because they get a miracle or they get healing. Now automatically they are part of the tribe. That's not so. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Because she admitted, I'm not a covenant believer, but I'll take what they don't want. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
I'll take what they don't want. Verse 28, then Yahush answered and said to her, O woman, great is your belief. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Let what you want be done for you. And her daughter was made well from that very hour. It is her belief. Watch this. Not her lifestyle. Her belief in him and his capabilities to bring forth healing is what got her what she wanted. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And Yahush departed from there and came near the Sea of Galilee and went up into a mountain and sat down there. Now remember, his whole focus was to go to where? To the prostituting sheep of Yahshua. Verse 30, we'll read verse 30. And great multitudes came to him, having with them those that were lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and many others, and cast them down at Yahush's feet, and he healed them. Meaning that this was who? The prostituting sheep of Yahshua. Because remember, he already told her he was only sent to who? The prostituting sheep. So this multitude knew, based upon what? Evidence that he was the Mashiach and that he was the one that they needed to get to. Now, once again, not changing up the order of what we're talking about. Now, excuse me. He came to feed his children, referring to the prostituting sheep of the house of Yahshua. The Canaanite woman was a Gentile woman, or she was a woman of another nation or nationality. Are you following me?
Yes.
Yes. So she was able to get that for her daughter because of her belief, not because she was part of Yahshua. I've heard many stories and many things, but let's go back to the word where he called her a dog, and even she admitted to a dog. He didn't call us dogs. He called us prostitutes.
Sorry.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
The difference between a prostitute and a dog, it's their nature.
Right.
It's their nature. Dogs do what they do because that's their nature. Prostitutes, that's not a nature. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a lifestyle. That's a lifestyle that is picked up. And you just begin to indulge in having more than one, not so much lover, but a prostitute is one who frequently is intimate because they're trying to get something out of it. Are y'all following?
Yes.
And then they get paid for it. Whatever it is they believe it is that they are needing or wanting. Now, after we see this, now we go into why does Yahush make his disciples fishermen, fishers of men? And it is to go and find any heathen or those that are not covenant to make them believers, which is the same thing. Our people are, once again, if you're not walking in covenant truth, you are considered a heathen, or you are considered, are you hearing me, a covenant breaker, a prostitute.
Yes.
Now, here it is. We must understand, and I like this saying, scripture interprets scripture. Verse 16 of Yehukin and Moshe, which is Mark. Let us turn there. When you have it, saying it is so. Mhm. Mm-mm. 16 and verses 16 through 18. I'm sorry. Yes, it is chapter 1. I'm sorry.
16 through 18 verses.
Mhm.
And walking by the sea of Galilee, Shimon and Adri, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And Yahush said to them, Come follow me, and I shall make you become fishers of men. And immediately they left their nets and followed it.
And it is so. All right, now you have to understand. It kind of almost seems like it's working in reversal, but as we see through Matit Yahu 5 and 24, they're already fishermen. They're already in the posture of a fisherman. They were already learning what to catch, what to release. Now watch this. He granted her her request, but he never said, follow me.
Mm-hmm.
He never put upon her anything that was not required, because she was not of the house of Yahshua. Are you following me?
Yes.
The importance, once again, of understanding is just because a person's belief gets them something or healing from the hand of the Abba does not mean that now we throw them into the equation. This has been the problem of many problems as the children of Yahshua, because now we throw them into the equation, and now when it comes time to work the equation, it becomes a problem, because now we're trying to fit a people in that don't belong there, or we're trying to fit a group in that does not belong in the equation. Now, once again, we see that, and he's showing them what it is that they need to go after, who it is, or what it is that is the desire of his, and that is the prostituting sheep of Yahshua. Anytime anybody that's a fisherman or no, when you go fishing, one of the primary things we use are worms. You know, you got so many types of worms. You got red worms, you got wigglers, we got pow worms. Anybody ever know fishing off the coast, or you lived in California? Pow worms are worms this long, and they have pinchers. Then you call them blood worms, because when you pull them apart, they bleed blood. But they are pinchers too. Yeah, and they look like they have a lot of legs, and they look like what is it, centipedes? Yeah, with a lot of legs. My mom and my father, when we would go fishing, they would fish with those when you're trying to catch striped bass, 10, 15, and 20 pounds. And yes, you can catch them off, because we've done it plenty of times when I was a young girl. But there are certain worms that they would use, certain things they would use in a certain test line. You would use certain fishing rod, fishing poles, or rods you would use. And so with that being said, when you are fishing, and even when you are fishing for a type of fish that are hungry are going to bite worms or whatever's in the water. Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, you got to understand catch and release. You catch it, it's not what you need or what is required, or what is the assignment, or what is on the list. Then what do? You release it and you let it go. Watch this. They may have gotten a snack, but that's okay. You let them go on with eating that worm, but you release them, because that is not the goal. They are not the goal. The goal is what? Either striped bass, brown, crappie, red snapper, flounder, on with kosher. Are you hearing me? Yeah. So you know what you're fishing for. So in spite of you catching these things, if it is not a part of the list or a part of that what is to be caught, then what do? You catch and you release, you let it go. So this was a prime object lesson for them. Just because she had belief to pull down healing or deliverance for her daughter does not mean now we go and try to solicit her, or we go, what is the term I'm looking for? Or we recruit her or him into now what it is we are doing. Because a person says, I believe that Yahush is the son of Yahuwah, and I believe that Yahuwah is the covenant king, and I believe that he is a sovereign of all, and that he created all things, and that you all are the people or the nation of Yahshua. Yes, we told our Abba Yahuwah that you come to this understanding. Now, what I need you to do is move out of the way Remain with that belief, but move out of my way and let me go after what I've been assigned to go after. What we end up doing is we end up going basically at times sidebarring or putting on hold our assignment to minister to those that are in our company right then and there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's what ended up happening. But Yahush did not do that, and he was teaching them not to do that. They didn't do a follow-up, but word got back to them. Excuse me, are you following me?
Yes.
It is important that we understand these things. Why is it important that we understand these things? So that we don't get caught up in missing our assignment to be fishermen. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Now, as he walked by the Sea of Galilee, or Galilee, he saw Shimeon and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. Verse 17, and Yahushua said unto them, come after, and I will make you to become fishers of men. And straightway they forsook their nets and followed him. Now you have to understand what would make them forsake their business and follow after the Mashiach. Now you have to understand Christianity teaches you a different thing. When you walk to Christianity, the first thing they tell you, and I'm not opposing businesses. Please believe me, I'm not. But you have to understand, they left their businesses in the hands of their hired help. Because what was moved to them was, here it is, the Mashiach, a moray, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Telling me to follow him. Are you following me?
Yes.
That was the greatest thing that anybody could ever have had asked of them, because they understood this is a once in a lifetime chance. Nowadays, if you tell people you are a Mora or a moray, you do not really get respect. You don't. Why? Because everybody and their mama and them believe that they are one too. But there's no respect. Now, mind you, what was it that was in them that made them say, hey, we need to follow him? One, because evidence. They have been reading. They have been studying Jeremiah 16, verses 13 through 16. And we're going to go there in a minute. So when he said this, it registered in their ruach that, hey, this man knows something. And he asked us to follow him, to participate in his assignment, to be a part of his assignment. You have to understand, if someone of that caliber says, hey, follow me and I'm going to make you fishers of men. Nowadays, folk want to grill them. They want to know who they were under. They want to know this, that, and the other. And I'm not against knowing where you get your evidence from or get your information from. But I do have a problem that now it becomes, instead of something you want to do, it becomes the point that now you're trying to show somebody up. You're trying to basically belittle a person or make a person feel like that what they're called to do, they're not called to do it. Now understand, they knew enough to know that because he was requesting of them, that they needed to follow him. Nowadays, once again, if you say, look, follow me because I'm going to make you a fisherman of men. Now people look at you like, excuse me, I'm already fishing men. But there's a technique and a method that we must follow in order to fish the right type of people. You're fishing for prostitutes. And if you don't know how to fish for a prostitute, you ain't going to catch it. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Because you got to remember, they're in that position because they want to be. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
95% of women that are prostitute and even men that are gigolos, they're just men prostitutes. They enjoy doing what they're doing because of what it yields to them. Some get sexual gratification out of it. Some, they look at the money aspect of it. Some look at it, well, it's companionship and I can choose who I want to be with and I don't have to be stuck with the same person. So when you come with a person with that mentality, you got to bring evidence and show to them they are better than this, and that in one individual, they can be satisfied all the way around. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You don't need 3 and 4 and 5 religions. If you need 4 and 5, this is not a religion. But if you need 4 and 5 ways of instruction, that means you're not getting it from one source. One source should substantiate and should feed that need in you to know who you are and what your purpose is. When that is not there, that means they have to basically complement one another, because one is not effective enough or strong enough. So you need 4, 5, and 6. When we turn to Yahuwah, who is more than enough through Yahushua our Mashiach, then you realize I don't need the rest of these. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Until that is recognized and admitted, people will continue to follow in that same pattern and do. Once again, why am I saying this? Because you have to understand, our people have been walking in this way for so long that the evidence that they have is so sure to them that they're not willing to look at any other evidence. They're not willing to take that chance to look at any other evidence. Now listen what he says. So now you have to have the right type of bait. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
You have to have the right type of bait. You have to know what it is you're doing. And when you go after them, you have to keep fishing. Sometimes there are days when we would go fishing and we wouldn't catch nothing. We wouldn't even get a bite. But we go back and say, no, we're going to keep on going because we know one of these things got to work. But we don't have to second guess. We know what works. Now let's read a little further. Now I'm gonna go back and read this again. He said, and I will make you to become fishers of men. And straightway they forsook their nets and followed him. They didn't go and call on, boo-boo them. They didn't go and call on the other hired hand. They were like, hey, it'll be 3D. We got to go because this is what we're waiting for. Many of us, we say we wanted to walk in truth, but was it what you were really looking for? I can say without a shadow of a doubt, yes, for me. Because the moment he called me to walk out of this, I dropped everything that I was doing in Christianity and ran for it. Because there was a sense of knowing and recognizing that voice, because this is what I was seeking for. They were seeking for this time. When you are seeking for a time of deliverance, when you are seeking for a time of impartation, when you're seeking for a time to connect, when that time is presented, you are not going to do anything but humble yourself and give in to that time and follow after it. Because that's what you've been searching for. That's what you've been waiting for. And they were waiting for it. Many times our people are not. Why? Because once again, they're content in that state. Yahuwah had an eye through Yahush to know who was waiting, who was hungry, who was waiting to hear those words. See, when you're fishing takes patience. And it takes endurance, and it takes sometimes utilizing everything you have and going back and getting more. Because you realize there'll be times that you will cast that rod out there or cast that hook out there, and little bitty ones will eat it off. And you pull a naked hook in and say, no, what, I ain't getting no bite because I don't have no bait. Because that's what we call the little, we call them what the, I forgot, there was a term we'd be laughing. Talking about that's the little tiny ones that go and bite around it and eat the worm off. And they won't take the whole worm. They will eat it off.
Right.
They'll just take bites and eat it piece by piece.
Right.
And next thing you know, there's nothing on there. And then you have, when you're fishing for bigger fish, you have to use a different type of bait. That's when we get the minnows this size, catch a fish, and we cut it, and then we take it and put it out there. That's when you're fishing for bass, and the hooks be about the size of your finger. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Immediately, the question arises: why did they instantly drop everything and followed Yahush without hesitation? It is actually very simple, because the answer for it is this. Once again, in the scripture.
Mm-hmm.
This is why, because the scripture is what they were listening for. Jeremiah 16. And so it is important for us it is for us to look at it and be able to draw from that same conclusion. Scripture first.
Yeah.
Scripture first. Because scripture without the backing and without evidence is not going to help the situation. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
All right. Let us go to Jeremiah chapter 16. The devil trying to be busy. Yes, he is. All right. When you have it said, it is so.
It is so.
Chapter 16, verse 13 through 16, please.
Therefore, I will cast you out of this land into a land that you know not, neither you nor your boat. And there they shall serve other false powers, day and night, where I will not show you favor or esteem. Therefore, behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, that it shall no more be said, Yahuwah lives, that brought up the children of Yasharal out of the land of Mitzrayim. But Yahuwah lives, that brought up the children of Yasharal from the lands of the north, and from all the lands where he had driven them. And I will bring them again into the land that I gave their fathers. Behold, I will send for many fishers, says Yahuwah, and they shall fish them. And after I will send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain, and from every hill, and out of every hole, the holes in the rocks. And it is so.
And it is so. All right. I'm going to start at verse 11. We're going to read this again. Once again, it is important that we establish an understanding of what was taking place then and what is taking place now. It's very important that we understand there are still fishermen out there. And when I say fishermen, there are still fishers that are fishing, but not just men. And we say men, we're talking about the children of Yahshua. We're not talking we're not just talking about men gender-wise. Are you hearing me? We're talking about the children of Yahshua. Very important, because sometimes I think this thing gets misconstrued and people think, well, it is just for the men and the women are just supposed to die and that's it. No, he came for the prostituting sheep of Yahshua, meaning that we all were stuck into or drawn into prostitution because we followed after the ways of our abbas and our emas. Now let's look at verse 11. Then shall you say to them, because your abbas have forsaken me, says Yahuwah, and have walked after other false power, and have served them, and have worshipped them, and have forsaken me, and have not kept my Torah. This is why these things have come about. Right. Once again, I said in the beginning, the root of all poverty concerning our people and sickness is disobedience. It is reaped in disobedience. Many times our people look at the evidence in somebody else's life, because you have to remember, what is it that drew them away from the truth to walk into a false power or after false powers? They saw evidence that presented itself logical in these people's lives. Are y'all following me? Yes. And with that being said, they then turned from the Abba and said, hey, there's evidence. Not realizing they had evidence too. But they wanted to follow after this. Are y'all following me? Yes. Verse 12 says, and you have done worse than your Abbas. For behold, you walk everyone after the imagination of his evil heart. Whatever they imagined, they followed after it. They had no boundaries, just like you can see Tiyam, no boundaries. And many times we believe certain things to be error. And I'm not saying we call right wrong and wrong right, but let's look at that in its proper perspective. He said that they will call wrong right and they will call right wrong. Many times you have to look at that. The reason that is done is because many times we look at what is right because we were not accustomed to what was right or righteous in the eyes of the Abba. Now it is wrong. Many say that keeping the feasts are wrong. Many say keeping the Sabbath is wrong. Why? Because indoctrination said you don't have to keep the Sabbath. There's no, why keep a seventh day when every day of the Yom you're supposed to be, it's supposed to be sacred or Kadesh. But you have to understand this time was set aside from the very beginning for us as a time of rest. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so with that being said, now what has happened? People have taken that what is sacred and just said, well, any day can be that day. That's not so. And so in order for us to truly be able to look at the things that have to be restored and why our people have to be brought back into truth, fully into truth, is because of the things that our ancestors and forefathers passed down to us.
Right.
People say it's wrong. You don't have to keep the feast. What you're going to do, go kill a cow and sacrifice the blood. Then they become mockers and they become ignorant. You start thinking, that Yahushua died for us. And if we do slaughter a lamb, it is not for the blood. It is because we are celebrating the Passover.
Right.
But once again, because of ignorance and because what has been labeled as being evil and wrong has been accepted for many, they continue to follow in that lie. And so now here it is. He said, look, you got to go get these people. You got to go fish them out. And you have to understand something. Fishing is a very violent sport, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because the moment they take that hook or they take that bait, you got to set that hook in the mouth of the fish in order to catch them. And sometimes it tears their lips. Sometimes it brings blood. Sometimes fishing, you end up catching them in the tail. You catch them in the back. You catch them all over. Sometimes that's just, I won't say an accident, but that's just one of the ways you catch them. But you really want to catch them with their mouths, because when you catch them with their mouths, that is a statement and an action that says, I am opening myself up to receive that what is presented before me.
Yeah.
Because they willingly went after the bait. May sound, a little off, but it is true. Somebody said, but what if you caught them any other way? You catch them any other way. Now you're going to have to do some other type of things. Are you following me?
Yes.
But when you catch them because they've come on their own accord, that makes it a little easier. Because once that hook is set, you got it. There's no getting out of that. Because they wanted it. They went after it. Most of the time, especially when you're fishing for bass and they trailing behind that fish, you got them. All you got to do is wait for them to take that bait, because they're at it. They can smell it. They can sense it. And they're ready for it, and they're going to get it.
Right.
And when they grab it, you set that hook. Now you might have a fight. That's the second or third part of it. You might have a fight getting them in. Sometimes it takes hours or hour to get a nice sized bass in. Excuse me. When we would fish off the in California off the coast, we would catch off the bait, no exaggerating, striped bass as long as this table and this wide. And we'd catch them when they would swim in packs. We would catch them. We'd catch them sometime 3 and 4. Once we got 3 or 4, we were done, because you'd be wore out. We'd take them back, fillet them up, and we would, now watch this, we wouldn't just eat them. My mom and my dad, they would go and they would have fish fries and invite people over. And that's where we'd have bread and fish, and they would eat wine, and we would have Kool-Aid. But that's what they would do. But you talking about a fight, and you talking about something to behold. Now, we really don't see a lot of our fishermen, melanated fishermen, because most of the time to get in those type of sports, it's very hard for us, because we don't get the sponsorship as many as the European people do. But fishing is not, it's a sport, but it's also a way of life. But I watch him and he'd say, wait, you gotta wait. I feel him pulling it, and you can see that line going out. You can see it going out, and you put your finger on it. And when you have your finger on it, you feel that little bump, you feel that bump. And then when you feel it and they take it and they run with it, and then you set it, and then that pole bending over, and they fighting it and reeling it in. And you be up there hollering, we be hollering like we at a football game and we at a sport. Because we like, get it in, because once you hook it and get it in, ain't no going back out.
Right.
There's no going back out. And we put them out there and lay them on a rock, and we'd have a burlap sack.
Mm-hmm.
And we would take it, wet it, and we'd put it over the fish, because they would be too big to tie up and hang them over in the water. So we'd have a place, there was a big old nice rock. We would call it going through the tube. where we would go fish. And we was a place specifically that we would go. And it was like almost made, it was crazy, made like an oven. You know how when you go and you play Minecraft and you dig that hole and we put it in there, but he would take those and keep them wet and lay them back up in there and let them stay. They wouldn't stay too long. And then when it was time to go, he would put them on a rope, tie them up by their mouths, and he, excuse me, toss them over his shoulder, about 3. And then my mom would have about 1 or 2. I kid y'all not, we leave away with them this size, 4 and 5, when they be swimming in packs. Yeah, in schools, thank you, when they be swimming in schools. And so once again, but we didn't catch them using little tiny worms. We had to catch them with that, what was appealing. Now someone would say, well, do we change our method? No, we present to them scripture.
Right.
Because remember, people that are in Christianity, that's what they want, scripture. They want to know that this way of life is scriptural. They want to know this is it. And the only way to win them is with scripture.
Right.
The only way. Now, he says, therefore, will I cast you out of this land into a land that you know not, neither you nor your Abba's, and there shall you serve other false power, Yam and Layla, where I did not show you esteem. Now, once again, many have fought and said that we were already here, and many of us didn't come on ships and all that stuff. I do know this one thing: scripture don't lie.
Right.
And it is our evidence. It is what we believe in. Are you following?
Yes.
Therefore, verse 14, behold, the Yamim come, says Yahuwah, that it shall no more be said, Yahuwah lives, that brought up the children of Yasharal out of the land of Mitzrayim. But Yahuwah lives, that brought up the children of Yasharal from the land of the north. In other words, this is talking about our people in this generation. Are you hearing me? Or this people. Where he had driven them, and I will bring them again into their land that I gave to their Abbas. He's going to bring us or take us back to that land. Now watch this. Behold, I will send for many fishers, says Yahuwah, and they shall fish them. Watch this. And after will I send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. He said, I'm going to fish them. I'm going to get what is mine. It is important that we understand fishing and hunting are 2 different types of sports.
Mm-hmm.
Fishing, once again, it takes patience. Cast your net, or you cast your hook out there. Either way, you're fishing either with a net or you're fishing with a fishing line and hook or what have you. But when you're hunting, that's a different type of method. When my dad would go hunting, there were certain things they did. They had to change up their smell so that when they went out, they didn't smell like an enemy. You have to understand, when you're trying to hunt deer knows the difference between the smells of animals and humans. And if they smell humans, they're going to stay away from it. Mm-hmm. So they would have to mask the smell. And when they would go, they had to make sure that everything they needed from their guns, and then they couldn't use guns that would destroy the meat. Then they had to know where to shoot them in order to be able to bring them in without damaging the meat. We're fishing and hunting, and in doing so, you don't want to damage the meat. In other words, you don't want to damage the person that you are trying to bring in. We're trying to recover them. And recovering somebody means that there is a level of delicacy you still have to use. Does that mean we're going to be pushovers or we're going to let people just walk over us? Absolutely not. We're going to continue to promote truth, but in a manner that they'll be willing to listen to it. And if they're not willing, then we walk away. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And one thing about hunting, you have to stalk your prey. You just don't get there. You get in high places, and most of the time people kind of put out corn, and they put out their deer stands, and they wait and sit up high, and they say, we saw this, and they go and they scout it out first. We do the same thing when we're fishing. We call it chumming the water. We would take the barnacles when the tide would go in, and we get in there. Y'all, some of the place we would walk, and you look up and you're like, oh, that water is high. we'd be there and that rock be high as the ceiling. But when we're up there and the water's high, we'd be up there and you can see that water. So you didn't really want to fall in there. And then we would have sharks that would come around too. But we would go and we would scrape the barnacle off the rocks. And he would put it in a bucket. And he said, this is what we're going to do. He said, throw this in the water. We're going to throw it in there. And once the tide comes back in, it'll already be there and they'll be eating it. And so all we have to do is cast our hook with our bait on it and they'll be right there eating. So they're going to eat what's in the mist. Same thing when you're hunting. You take that corn and you put it out there. You make it easy for them to get. Now that they're able to see, hey, food, they'll eat it. And that's how you watch them. You watch what they're doing. Once again, you stop them. You prey on them. You watch their habits. And he said, okay, now we didn't saw it. They're doing it. We're going to go back now. We're going to do it because they've accepted the bait. You can't force feed anybody or anything because you'll run them away and they'll never come back. And so this is what Yahuwah said, and even Yahush makes reference to this. Once again, you can't force feed them.
Right.
But people that want it, they're going to listen and they're going to eat it. They're going to eat it. And then they're going to come back for more. Why? Because you're giving them the original rendering of that, what they believe they're following, but it's erroneous. And when you give that to them without the hose barred and without everything on it, all the extra attachments, then they're able to see clearly. They're able to look at it and really make a intelligent, conscious decision on whether to follow it and to truly look, research it or walk away from it. But you have to watch them. You can't just go in and throw it at people. You got to talk to them. And if they don't want it, yeah, it hurts your heart. It hurts because you're thinking, I'm just trying to show you the way that you really want to walk in, but walking in the right way. Because what you were doing is not the right way.
Sure.
Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important. And so he says, behold, I will send for many fishers, says Yahuwah, they shall fish them. Now remember, Yahuwah is saying what he's going to do, and he uses Yahush as the ideal fisherman. He shows us how to fish for men. Now, Yahush and his disciples going out into the nation to proclaim the true Besor, fishing them out of, or fishing the men, a term for the scattered house of Yasharal. It's a term for the scattered house, meaning there are women in there too. There are children in there too. That means he's looking for us to bring whole beds.
Right.
You know, many will say, well, you get the men and the men bring their families. No, understand something. When you get all of them, you fish for it all. You hear me? We didn't call the baby fish. We didn't call the grown fish. We didn't call the teenage fish. Are you following me? Yes. We didn't call them all. Now listen what he says in the footnote. The term hunters would be the time period when the Ibram people would come under immense persecution and would naturally want to return back to the land of Yasharal. The footnote in Ezekiel 37, this Exodus will be the greatest ever and the end of exile for Yasharal. Hunters, once again, hunting, making sure that what is to be hunted of the house of the dispersed would come to a place to where those that are to be fished will be fished and those that are to be hunted will be hunted. Once again, these are the ones that you got to know what you're doing. If you don't know anything about hunting, I would not advise doing it until you understand the methods and the importance of safety and hunting. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
But hunting is one, and it's a violent way of life, and it's a violent sport. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And you have to know what you're doing. But he said, I'm going to call for them. Why? Because he said, I know the ones that are hunters, and I know the ones that are fishermen. Because see, when you're fishing and you have a purpose and a goal, You ain't, you don't discriminate. Now, you got people now, according to the Fishing and Game warrant, Warren, yeah, Warden, thank you. They basically tell you, well, you can't catch this many, and they're too small, and you got to throw them back, catch and release, and all that kind of crazy stuff. The only thing I catch and release is that what is not in the list, and that is not required. But for everybody else, I'm going for babies. I'm going for toddlers. I'm going for the intermediate. I'm going for the young adults. I'm going for the settled adults, and then I'm going for the senior citizens. Because we're going for the house or the bed of Yahshua.
Okay.
And as such, when you're fishing and you're using this, look to catch the whole household. We don't switch up our bait unless we're hunting. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And those that are hunters are given a specific task. Those that are fishermen are given a task. But the goal of our assignment is to bring something home. And not just something, but the prostituting sheep of Yahshua. And see, this is why when you deal with people, when you be like, boy, they kind of rough. Those are hunters. I ain't talking about camps. Are you hearing me? And I'm not discriminating because I'm not saying all camps are bad. Are you following me?
Yeah.
You got those that are hunters and they go out there and they hit it because they're hunters. Because they realize one thing about hunting an animal and you wound it, if you're not careful, it'll turn right back around and it'll come at you. Mm-hmm. So a hunter knows, hit them and make the shot. And you can't be skittish and squirmish. You got to do what you got to do. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And fishermen, it's patience. All of them are steeped also in patience. Because you got to, when you catch that big one, it may take a minute to reel that boogie in. You're like, man, when this thing gonna get in? But by the time you get it in, and not because you wore it out in a bad way, but because you brought them to a place of submission to truth. That's what's important. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, it's very important. These men that Yahush called knew that when a rabbi calls you to come and learn from him, you only have one opportunity. What makes this invitation even more exceptional is that this rabbi, Yahush, quoted from the prophet Jeremiah, who talks of fishers that Yahuwah will raise up specifically to go and fish the lost tribes or the prostituting 10 tribes, the house of Yahshua. They knew perfectly well that this prophecy must still come into fulfillment because the house of Yahshua was scattered abroad for the last 700 years. And they were esteemed to be selected to become a part of this prophecy. So you have to understand, it didn't stop with them. We're still fishing and hunting because we're still what? Dispersed. Very important. So in my conclusion for this class on Tiyam, it is important that we understand that everybody is not going to follow and everybody is not going to accept it. The issue with the Pharisees, Yahush is very clear, who is part of the house of Yahshua. Let that sink in. And we have to be adamant as well. And regardless of who want to come and call us names and say you're racist, you don't know what you're talking about, you have to hold to your confession and stick to what the writings say. When we look at Yehukanan chapter 10, verses 24 through 27, then came the Ibn round about him and said unto him, how long dost thou make us to doubt? If thou be the Mashiach, tell us plainly. Yahush answered them, I told you, and you believe not. The works that I do in my Abba's name, they bear witness of me. But you believe not, because ye are not of my sheep. As I said unto you, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. How do we know his voice? Because we know the voice of the Abba through the writings. And this is why they had a problem. because they didn't know it. And when people don't know, they will try to ridicule you and make you think you don't know. And so it's important that you handle them just as the Mashiach handled them. It is important to know that Yahushua listened to his voice, which are his commands, and act on it. They follow him in his ways, and there is only one way, which is the way of the covenant. Now understand, when we say listen to Yahushua, we are also making reference to listening to Yahuwah, because Yahushua and Yahuwah are one. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
I'm not saying one and the same. I said they are one. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Yahushua and Yahuwah. Yahushua knows the heart and mind of Yahuwah. Therefore, whatever Yahushua says, you must understand it has already been approved by Yahuwah. Because he's not going to say anything outside of what has already been commanded and given.
Right.
Very important. Now, we're going to read this and then we're going to pray. Kepha was given a commission. What did Yahushua ask Kepha 3 times after his resurrection, and then through that instructed him to do a specific task? Excuse me, as we look at Yehukin in 21, 15, and 17. So when they had dined, Yahushua said to Shimon Kepha, Shimon, son of Yonah, lovest thou me more than these? He said unto him, yes. Thou knowest that I have thee. He said unto him, feed my lambs. He said to him again the second time, Shimon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? He said unto him, yes. Thou knowest that I have thee. He said unto him, feed my sheep. Verse 17, he said unto him the third time, Shimon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Kepha was grieved because he said unto him the third time, lovest thou me? And he said unto him, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I have thee. Yahushua said unto him, feed my sheep. Feed them what? Torah truth. Covenant. The first covenant and the renewed covenant. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Very important. His sole vision was to go and get Yahush's lost sheep of the house of Yahshua and to return them to the covenant of Yahuwah. That is our commission. That is our vision. Anything other than that is not a vision from the Yahweh. Now I understand, people do what they do. But the question once again has to be asked. When we do what we do, are we doing it because it is part of the Abba's vision, or are we doing it because we feel it's necessary to do this thing because it's what we want to do? I've said it. I don't believe in debating. I am not a debater. I don't believe it's necessary or important. Yahushua didn't debate. He stated truth and he kept moving. They were the ones constantly following up behind him, but he always was going in the opposite direction. They always were coming after him saying, hey, we got a question for you. But he was always going what? Every time they met him, he was always going after and going to us.
Right.
He was never going, setting appointments to deal with them.
Right.
It was always, his mission was to go where we were. Scattered and lost and broken and beaten and falling after any and everything. And they would always catch him. So once again, the question is, where do we get our mission from? And what evidence can you prove that what you were doing is truly of the Yahweh?
Right.
Our mission and our purpose, sole purpose and passion should be to go after the prostituting sheep of Yahshua. If that's not our purpose, then what are we doing? Then what are we doing? There are still a prostituting people out there, our people, that still need to hear, the ones that are willing to hear. Because remember, he said, my sheep. His sheep are still baying, what you call it, bleeding. What's that, the term when they're bleeding? They're still making a noise. They're still out there. It's just that have to become sensitive and hear. And then we've got to be willing to go and share with them and bring them out of a world of sin. That's my passion. I'm going to share something with you. I had to have that passion restored because you get tired of fighting people. Well, then that's the ones you know ain't it. Stop fighting people that don't want it. His sheep know his voice. When he spoke to the disciples, they willingly left and followed him. They didn't know where they were going, but they knew he's the one. He's the one. And they followed. I refuse to wear myself out over people that don't want it, over people that are not his sheep. And you ought to get tired of it too. It's time that we show the prostituting sheep, our people, the evidence that this is true. Show them the evidence that has been presented, and present to them the evidence that is legitimate and that will give them what they've been searching and seeking for all this time. Because if they truly, really want to walk in and have a relationship with him, there is no way you're going to turn a deaf ear to what he'll be given to you.
Right.
If you don't listen, it's because you really don't want a relationship. With that being said, once again, I pray that the Abba stirs your passion and stirs your innermost being to recognize and realize you are a fisherman. If you're not a fisherman, you are a hunter. And hunters and fishermen take seriously their goal and their responsibility. When you go hunting with hunters, man, they be like, if you're coming with me, you can't be skittish, you can't be doing all that talking, you got to know how to listen, and you follow my lead. If I can't say anything else, like I say, all camps are not bad, but one thing about it, they listen and they follow. If one is talking, everybody else is watching. Everybody else is subject to the one that's talking or bringing forth. Then when they're called upon, they say and do. They ain't up there. I'm glad when they get through, because you know I got something to say. You had something to say, the floor will be open for you to say. Are you hearing me? Yes. But it's important that we don't lose that fervency and we don't lose that passion. And definitely don't throw out the order. We are fishermen. You are hunters. Let's go get what we've been assigned to go get. And that's our prostituting people. Let's go get them. Let us make a commitment to go and get those that are still wandering aimlessly in darkness, fumbling around in the dark. Let's go get them. I have the skill, you have the skill. Let's go get them. And let's bring them back to who and where they belong. And that is to Yahuwah and to the nation, the bed of Yahshua. It is important that we do so. It is important that we do so. I want to encourage you, keep your head up, keep your shoulders squared, and keep your heart and your feet in and upon the Torah, because you can't go wrong. Make a point after this Sabbath that you are willing to go out there and have a direction. Abba Yahuwah, show me where you want me to fish. Show me where you want me to cast my net out. Show me where you want me to charm the water. Show me where you want me to cast my fishing line out. Show me. Give me an ear so that I can go and fish in the area where the fish that is needed to be caught can be caught. Show me. We wasted enough of time on other frivolous and foolish things. Let us get in the mindset and do what we're called to do. Once again, keep your head up, keep your shoulders squared, and keep your heart and your feet in and upon the Torah, because you can't go wrong when you adhere to his instructions for your life. I am Aliyah Yasharal, and I am the Mora of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom of Great Belief Congregation located in South Carolina. I want you to remember here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom of Great Belief Congregation, this is the place where the Torah does the body excellent. Until next time, may Abba Yahuwah Baruch Atah and keep you in his shalom until we meet again. Also, I want you to be reminded that you've been touched by Champion TV, a place where the champions reside. And it is so.
And it is so.
This is Champion TV.